You're listening to 90.7 FM WKGC, Panama City.
From WKGC Public Media in Panama City, this is ReelTalk, the place where you can join the cinematic conversations frame by frame each week. If movies are your thing, give us a ring, 850-772-6803. As today's special intro music indicated, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the landmark motion picture, the original summer blockbuster, the movie that either made you afraid of the ocean or inspired you to dream of becoming a marine biologist, Jaws. I'm your host, Ryan R.L. Terry. Joining me today are returning guests, Paul Bonnette.
As I told you, I knew we were going to need a bigger station.
I love what you did there. And returning guest, film critic Gino Sassani.
How you doing? I'm probably the only one in the room old enough to have seen the film when it came out, right?
On first run, yes, it is. We're hoping to pull on some of that experience you have later on here in the show. Paul, listeners, as you remember, is the endowed chair of the Hilton Hospitality Management Program at Gulf Coast State College, and Gino is a longtime film critic and member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association, as I am a member of the same organization where Gino serves on the board. Gino's also an award-winning musician with a new album out now, as I understand it. Gino, is it out where we can all listen to it?
It's out, but it's still in the review queue. You got to make sure we don't have those graphic lyrics yet, but it should be on all the streaming things soon.
Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome back to the show, guys. Hard to believe that it's been 50 years since the film's initial release.
I mean, it's so wild that it has been so long, but you know, when you go back and watch Jaws, it's the film that stands the test of time.
It really is. It's timeless. I mean, that's the real test of success. It's not how many golden statues did the film receive as much as the question is, are we still talking about it umpteen years or several decades later? Gino, what about you? 50 years later, it's crazy that we are celebrating its diamond anniversary.
It is, but you know what? It's not crazy. I mean, the movie really was iconic at the time. It really did change the way that movies do business. It changed the way we see movies. And, of course, it put Steven Spielberg on the map.
And with so much to talk about, we're going to need a bigger show.
Oh, of course, you're going to have to go with that joke. We've used that joke so many times now, but it's the joke that just keeps enduring. It's the dad joke of dad jokes.
Yes, it is, and so therefore I couldn't resist because people, whether they want to admit it or not, they love dad jokes. And I wish we had more time to talk about this than our show today, but how's about I drop 2 out of our 3 breaks, which would give us a couple of more minutes.
There are a lot of dad jokes you can fit into 2 or 3 more minutes, Ryan, so I have no doubt that you could easily fit some more.
Okay, well, great. Angela, let's go to the break at the bottom of the hour.
All right, I am taking care of that as we speak.
Okay, excellent. Well, here at the beginning of the show, guys, I want us to hop into the DeLorean and travel back to the 20th of June in the year of our Lord, 1975.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
Now, what it must have been like to have experienced the anticipation for and watching Jaws for the first time in 75. Gino, as you indicated just a moment ago, you were able to watch it on its first run. So what can you tell me about your experience in watching Jaws back in June of 1975?
I did. I was a 14-year-old kid, which I think was the perfect audience for this film. And it was exciting. I mean, it was really the first film that I felt immersed. You know, a lot of films you see as kids, but this film was immersive. It somehow brought you to the beach. It brought you to the ocean. And certainly It was the first film also that had so much merch at the theater. I don't remember being able to buy the cups like you can today and the shirts and stuff at the theater like I could for Jaws. And I had a bunch of Jaws merch. I spent way too much money on it, but I don't have it anymore.
I think when I posted the photo of me out at the beach on the 20th with my Jaws towel, I believe you commented that you had an original Jaws T-shirt
I did, but it's
from
gone.
the film.
But
it's
I don't
gone.
still have it. But like I said, I don't remember ever there being a film where you had so much merchandise connected to the film. I mean, today every film is merchandise overload. But I don't remember that happening before, so I think this broke a lot of ground then. But, I mean, just the atmosphere. I just still remember as a 14-year-old kid sitting there mesmerized by the whole thing.
It certainly broke a lot of records. We've often attributed the etymology of the term blockbuster to Jaws, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that 2 years earlier, The Exorcist also saw massive crowds wrapped around the block. And without detracting from our celebration of Jaws today, do either of you know why the term became associated with Jaws versus The Exorcist, even though the latter predated the former by 2 years?
I'm going to let you talk about that because I have a theory, but I'm pretty.
I think it's because it was there for everybody. You know, Exorcist was, I assume it was R-rated. I mean, I saw it anyway. My parents brought me at 13, so they knew I liked horror movies and things. But I think it had to do with this was the first family movie of that kind. But it's interesting you should mention that because a common friend of yours and mine, Ryan Gill, at the Tampa Theater, we talked about this once. And at the time of Jaws, I think that blockbuster came about then because they used to, I remember reading articles about where the term came from. And that was back in the days when they used to big giant ice blocks to cool the rooms. And if they went through a whole block of ice, the movie was termed a blockbuster.
Yeah, and we often associate it with crowds wrapped around the block, which is also true. But if we go back even further to our silent pictures and even our pictures from the 1930s and 40s, you are right, Gino, in that if we go back far enough, it actually has to do more with the block of ice. And then later on, it becomes associated with crowds wrapping around the block. And that's the other thing that separated Exorcist from Jaws and why we associate blockbuster with the one, because it's all in how the films were marketed. Also, how long it took for the crowds to really catch on. When The Exorcist opened, it was a very small release. Crowds eventually discovered it, and yes, it did break records. It was the highest-grossing film for a very long time. In fact, it was the highest-grossing horror film up until here more recently. The title escapes me. I'm going to remember it later. But it wasn't until more recently.
Like The Conjuring?
No, I think it was It, I think. I think It Chapter 1 was when it became the highest grossing. But you brought out earlier, Gino, in that Jaws is really for everyone.
Yes.
And so it was instant attraction by crowds. So day one, wide release, which was not a common practice. And so we have an uncommon practice in releasing the film with all the merchandise that's there, and instantly the crowds were wrapped around the block. And so hence the summer blockbuster was born. And the rest is really history. It transformed how movies were marketed. Paul?
Well, so, I mean, Jaws really was lightning in a bottle during this time, in which several, I think, really cinemas had really kind of, they knew what these features were and what they could do. But I think films like The Exorcist was a popular thing for a whole separate reason. It really messed with people. It really made them feel, a certain kind of way. Jaws was what you went to the movies for. And so, I mean, it really was lightning in a bottle. I mean, they made this film for $9 million, and it grossed over $441 million, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I think, Gino, you may remember better than me, but it's within its first weekend that it made back its entire budget, or within the first couple of weekends. Do you remember if it was 1 or 2 weeks? Because it was very quickly.
What was surprising is that within the first week it made its budget. By the second week it had made all of its money back, all the marketing budget, the post-production stuff that you have that's usually not associated with the budget. It was making a real, actual profit by its second weekend.
It continued to perform incredibly well for weeks and weeks. It hung out in theaters a lot longer than I think our our creative crew and even Universal thought, because it very easily could have been just another creature feature, and thanks to happy mechanical accidents, it saved us from being just another generic creature feature. But crowds kept coming in, and so it defined everything else that would come out later. About exactly 15 years earlier, Psycho also took the world by storm. And in my opinion, Jaws and Psycho share three important elements in common. They both have a powerhouse cast, strategic suspense, and a brilliant and often parodied burn-in-your-mind musical score.
That's true.
And so how do you guys feel about Jaws' delivery on these areas of cast and suspense and the score?
Well, one thing that I think is kind of funny, so this is when John Williams really is getting on the scene. He's got Superman, he's got, but they're in Star Wars. All of these are around the same time, but Jaws is a little bit before that. And so John Williams, who's iconic, he goes to Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg goes, hey, can you please create this score, to kind of show the suspense, to really kind of get people invested. And so John Williams goes, he plays the score for Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg laughs and then goes, that's really good. That's awesome. Now play the real one. Yeah. He thinks it's a joke. Mm-hmm. And Steven Spielberg later on was like, I was so wrong. This was just kind of that made the movie. From
the very beginning. No sooner have the credits began that you get this theme that we now is memorized. I'm pretty sure babies are born knowing this is one of those earworms that you're just born with. You know it. May not have ever seen the movie before, but you know where it's from and what it means, like these screeching violins from Psycho, which is also a very small part of Bernard Herrmann's score, but yet it's the parts that we remember the most, just like this one. There's a lot more to Williams' score in Jaws, but we remember those 10 seconds, better than anything else. The cast, Paul, you and I were talking before we started the show, some interesting behind-the-scenes facts with two of our stars, Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw, which actually translated to helping their characters on screen. Why don't you tell us a little more about that?
Well, before I do that, then you have to let me have one of my other fun facts, which is you jumped into the DeLorean and to go back in time. However, if you go back to Jaws 3, you will see a very young Leah Thompson as a water skier in Jaws 3, cementing the two things. And I'm sure Gino, he keeps commenting. I keep ignoring. I keep talking in front of him. Sorry, Gino. So I'm gonna let you talk.
I was saying I was agreeing with you.
Oh, good. Okay.
I was saying yeah.
Well, cool. And so, Robert Shaw, who plays Quint, and Richard Dreyfuss, they did not get along at all on set. Now, Robert Shaw was he was a very dynamic individual. He is from England and Ireland, and he is classically trained. He has done The Cherry Orchard by Chekhov. He has done Macbeth. He has cut his teeth in theater. In fact, actually, as we were talking, Chief Brody's wife, Ellen, the actress who plays her, Lauren Gary, she becomes enamored with him. He actually is able to diagnose her son, who has chickenpox, before they even show up. And so she thinks he's the coolest thing on set. And but Richard Dreyfuss doesn't think so. Him and Richard Dreyfuss just start butting heads, which translates great to their characters, because their characters, it is an episode of where real life mirrors the actual movie.
And Gino, you and I have spent a lot of time in your home theater watching movies that are often very suspenseful. What do you think help the magic to work? What is the secret ingredient? What is the magic in the suspense of Jaws compared to other creature features? Because we certainly had them dating back to the 1940s and more commonly in the 50s. And so having a creature wasn't new, but it's what this film did, what made it special. So what are your thoughts on how it wound up that suspense?
For me, I always said there was a trilogy involved here. I think, as Paul's already alluded to, we have an excellent cast, which I think brings it over the top. But we also have not only this music that we talk about, and which made cello players happy all over the world, but also the way they interplayed. I don't think I had seen a movie, at least as a kid yet. I don't think I had seen a movie where all of these things play together. You know, it's not only just a dun dun dun. You know, when the boat's flying across the water after the, you know, with the shark with the barrels and stuff, and you hear this wonderfully spry water music. I mean, it's perfectly timed, and everything is perfectly timed. And then you get the silence when Robert Shaw delivers the monologue, and so the absence of music. I think that and then the third thing was the cinematography. I mean, they did such a great job, and I know they had all these technical problems with Brucey and stuff, but the fact is that cinematography holds up today as some of the best ocean, you know, out there in the water cinematography I've ever seen.
And my dad, who will say that he is not a film critic, my parents are actually in the studio with us today, folks. They're here on vacation, and they're listening in on the show. But we were watching it last night, and he commented on the cinematography in the film. And he said for him, it reminds him of a lot of what he has come to expect from classic Spielberg. And so it just goes to show that you don't have to be a film critic or a film scholar to pick up on these elements, that the general public notices it. Whether or not, you know, they think about it in the same way or will dissect it in the same way is besides the point, but it is recognizable. And so I love how you bring out the cinematography in this, because we certainly play around a lot with the lighting and with the framing, and it's very the moving shots draw you into the scene, particularly the way the light and the fog work when we are coming up on the fisherman's boat there towards the end of the first act. And so we often talk about some of the other elements in the film, such as a score, and such as, of course, the mechanical problems with Bruce, which everybody knows at this point. But, you know, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous and very different from other creature features around that same time. Jaws also, upon watching it, concerns itself with various fears. And we have Brody's fear of the water, or as he sardonically says, drowning, the mayor's and townsfolk's economic fears, and the movie people and audience fears of a great white shark. I'd like to spend a moment here talking about how the film both dramatizes fear and provides us with rich social commentary on the folly of man and much more. So, Gino, when you're looking at this from a critical perspective and what the film has to say about fear itself, what are some of the social commentary that jumps out at you, and even individual scenes where this is really amplified?
Well, I have to tell you, even as a kid, we used to go to the ocean every year for vacation, and after this movie was the first time that I even thought about sharks. I mean, we used to do fishing out there because my dad had a boat in Jersey, and we would do a lot of fishing, and we'd catch sharks, and I never really thought about that. This movie made me start to think about them when I went into the water, and I got to tell you, Peter Benchley himself later on felt really bad about the fact that he felt that so many sharks were killed. Because of the fear and because of all that, and he thinks a lot of that reflects on Jaws when he wrote the book, and I think that that's true. I think the big social thing that happened here is I think sharks kind of lost out because they were portrayed so much as this killing machine, evil kind of presence that I think people just, that's what sharks are. And I think it led to a lot of that, and Peter Benchley himself was sorry about that, and I think that's the big social thing we have. And the other thing just to have of it that we carry with us when we go to movies is that I think because we got brought into this and it's something real. I mean, you go to a Frankenstein movie or a Wolfman movie, we know that stuff doesn't exist. But sharks are real, man, you know. Yeah. And that's what kept me – I thought about that for years when I would go in the ocean. I mean, it didn't stop me, but it did stop people from doing it.
I know, Paul, we were talking last week about I had come up to you about the increased interest in marine biology. And while that is true, much like Top Gun did for naval and air force recruitment, so there's a big uptick in interest. You also brought up that point that it villainized sharks, because you could easily make the argument that Bruce was just doing what Bruce does, and it was the human factor that was in his territory. But you brought up a lot of the similar points to Gino.
Well, and so there's actually several points to this as the villainize and the fear of the unknown. And just like when you're swimming, when you're afraid of the dark, when you're swimming and you can't touch the bottom, that's the dark. That's the unknown. And so as you played in the intro, this was in 1977, sharks were a unthinking killing machine for one reason and one reason only, which was to attack, kill. That's not at all the case. Sharks actually don't even like the taste of humans. And so it's not really like, in fact, most sharks try to stay away from humans because they're just we're not their taste. We're going to get in their way. We're going to scare off food. We're going to do things that upset them. And so they don't want to get anywhere near us. But also, and I'll kind of go to another point as well, but this actually at first did not help shark conservation. It actually hurt it quite a bit, like Gino had said, because of the fact that people did not care about killing sharks. Shark fin soup is a delicacy over in the Far East, and so people were like, sharks are evil, so I should not care about them. And so it's taken a long way to get back on track. People like Ocean Ramsey, she is a conservationist who showed that, hey, look, sharks are not just out to kill us. They're not out to just, eat our boat and swallow us whole and things like that. And that was one of the things. But there's also another fear that I wanted to kind of touch on that Gino mentioned, which is the real fear. Because Bruce here, this shark, we are probably not going to encounter a 25, 30-foot great white. Hopefully, like the largest great white in the Atlantic right now just pinged off the course of off the coast.
I read that over the weekend up in was it up towards like Jersey or
no, North Carolina. Try getting a lot closer, and that is an 18-foot. And that is one of the the biggest ones they've come up with. But a 35-foot shark, yes, this is very kind of real to them in a way, but the monologue that Quint gives about, because that's not just, this 30-foot shark that is eating a boat where you can suspend disbelief. No, this is the real story of the USS Indianapolis. This is tiger sharks. Tiger sharks are a little different than other sharks because tiger sharks are the garbage dumpster of the sea. They will eat anything. It doesn't matter how it tastes; they just eat it.
And they tend to be more aggressive, as I understand it. Bull sharks and tiger sharks are traditionally more aggressive than great whites and others. Right,
yeah. Great whites actually, going back to the Jurassic Park days, if we can, they actually were better hunters than the megalodon. This is one of the reasons why it's thought that the megalodon went extinct, because great white sharks were better hunters. Megalodons had to eat a lot more, and great white sharks have a certain way of hunting that is actually more efficient. And so great white sharks are about efficiency. They're about using, their energy to, attack prey, seals, things like that. But tiger sharks just kind of they just eat whatever they can find. And so, yes, in the case of the USS Indianapolis, there was not even a distress call sent out because this was so secretive. Right. And so that, to me, was a sobering moment in the midst of the sometimes upbeat, music and ocean shots, and it brought things back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, something that when I've lectured on Jaws to film studies classes, enjoy talking about who the real villain in the movie is. And often, we're drawn to the shark, and the shark's the villain, but I counter the argument in that the shark is just being the shark. The shark's doing what sharks do, And the real villain in the film is Mayor Larry Vaughn.
Yeah.
But then I've had to since kind of reevaluate my thoughts on that because, while I still agree that it's Larry Vaughn is the true villain in the film, I can't deny that to some degree, to whatever modicum of degree it is, that he was, making the decision that he felt was best for his summer town. Because they do thrive off of those summer dollars. And if you live in an area that depends upon tourists, depends upon summer travel, or maybe you're in a mountain region, you depend upon winter travel, because you can make the same argument, and something is coming in and is threatening the livelihoods, and to Quint's point in the meeting, you'd be on welfare all winter. Well, it would have been true for them. And so, while I think he is ultimately our villain, I must confess that I feel, looking back at the film in 2025, that I can empathize with where he was coming from, even though perhaps he went too far in that direction to keep everything open.
Did
but
he,
his
though?
fears were real.
Did he go too far? Because if you watch, he actually caves under pressure at the town meeting right before Quint comes in, and he goes, and Gino can attest to this.
Right. Yeah.
He actually says, okay, we're just going to close it for 24 hours. And Brody's like, I didn't agree to that. But he goes, okay, you know what? I've got to cave to this pressure. These people are going to vote me out of office. I'm not going to have a job anymore. So I've got to do what I have to do. And so you hear the people in the room go, 24 hours is 3 weeks. 3
I think
weeks.
somebody said. I think it was that hotel owner. And
right,
like,
is 3
weeks.
weeks. And so is he really the villain, or is he actually caving under the pressure of public opinion?
So in your opinion, you would take it further to say the mayor is just sort of a mouthpiece, and the real villain is actually the people of the town are sealing their own fate.
There is no villain in this movie. There is there is no villain in this movie.
I agree with that.
Oh, thank you. Good. Because I was like, this is going to be a controversial opinion.
No. I agree with that. Because, Larry, the mayor's not so bad, because remember when the attack does happen after, he caves, and he tells Brody, like, my kid was on that beach too. He's not doing this. He's doing it as a politician, but he's not doing it to be a bad guy. He's not villainizing anything. I mean, he let his kids on that beach, and they could have been the ones bitten. So you see it in his face when he says that, when he admits that he's wrong, and he said, my kids were on that beach. It's, he's not a villain. I agree.
Yeah, and so that's my whole thing, and thank you so much, Gino. Because I was a little nervous about that. It's like, I'm going to become the villain of this radio show.
Yeah, I know when I'm outnumbered.
Well, and so...
Oh, you think he is?
I've always thought of him as the villain. I've just reevaluated to what degree I thought of him as the villain, but because he wasn't, listening to the advice of experts around him, that I'm sure he pressured the coroner or the doctor that wrote that said it was originally a shark attack and retracted that. I imagine he retracts it because of pressure from the mayor. Of course, that is just an assumption because it's off screen.
It's true, but that's wishful thinking, I think. Yeah. I think that he was engaged in a little bit of denial and wishful thinking.
This is a classic example of the Stanford prison experiment, in my mind.
I'm unfamiliar with the Stanford prison.
Gino, do you know the...
Yeah, is that where they got the people to shock their friends?
Yeah, where they all divided up into one group was prisoners, one group was guards.
Where you press the button and you're like sending the electric shock.
Well, actually, it's more than that. They actually locked up one group, and one group was the prisoners, one group was the guards. And so they started actually behaving like those people. Even though these people were friends and these were students and everything, they became those people. Hindsight is 20/20. We can easily go back and go, he should have listened to Matt Hooper. He should have, done this. He should have. We are armchair quarterbacks. Right. And so he is a politician doing what he feels is best for his constituents. And so he is no different than just becoming, if we were in that situation, if that was a real situation and we were going, okay, do we close the beach and have all these people angry with us? Or do we take a chance and go, it's an isolated incident? When we come back from our next break, there's some things that, shark attacks happen all over the country, and they don't close the beach. And we could talk a little bit more about that and how there are, consequences beyond just what you do.
You got a lot of real talk on here today. I love the energy that we have going into this film. That's what makes a great film, are the different perspectives and the different energy that it draws, and each looking at the film through our own worldview and experiences. You're listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. My returning guests today are Paul Bonnette and Gino Sassani. We are celebrating the 50th anniversary, the diamond anniversary of Jaws this hour. Join our conversation by calling 850-772-6803. Let us know why you love Jaws and whether or not it's part of your annual 4th of July watch. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Keep the dial or stream right here on 90.7 WKGC Public Media.
Hurricanes, lightning, flooding, and tornadoes affect the entire state of Florida, and the team of meteorologists from the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network keep you informed around the clock. All year long, they are committed to providing in-depth weather coverage, both over the radio and on the mobile app Florida Storms. The Florida Public Radio Emergency Network is supported by this station and Citizens Property Insurance, online at citizensfla.com.
This spring, a huge algal bloom off the coast of California produced a toxin that would end up sickening thousands of marine mammals.
Most of our facilities have done what they would do in a year in the first 3 months of this year.
I'm Elsa Chang. How scientists are helping some of these animals heal while preparing for another outbreak. On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Weekdays at 3 p.m. on WKGC.
Welcome back to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC, where we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Jaws. I'm your host, Ryan R.L. Terry, and with me today are returning guests Paul Bonnette, chair of the Hilton Hospitality Program at Gulf Coast State College, and film critic and award-winning musician Gino Sassani. Join the conversation this hour, 850-772-6803. We've talked a lot about some of my favorite things when it comes to Jaws and a lot of the favorite memories that you guys have. But while we were on break, listeners mentioned that my parents are in studio with us today. My dad, Mike, brought up a great point that he wanted to talk about, to kind of tag on to what we were all talking about and circling around going into the break here. So you can't offer up a great idea in a radio studio and then say, I'm not going to go on mic. You offer up a great idea, a great perspective. Now. You have to bring it up. And so Angela's got your mic on, Dad. So share with our listeners what some of your thoughts were about the dynamics there of the town and the mayor, because it was very interesting.
Well, the whole discussion began by talking about what was the appeal to this kind of genre of movie versus the old classic horror movies. And Gino, you talked about how the reality of sharks versus the characters or the monsters of classic horror are so unrealistic. People, it's more entertaining, but people are, I suppose they're afraid a little bit, but when it's real, when it could be possibly something that could be real, I think it actually jettisons something of more of a real type fear in people's lives. And then, the reality of the economic fear associated with the town, that was real. And so, one of the thoughts that I had was that this kind of a movie was almost a precursor to reality TV, Fear Factor and all kinds of, reality type shows where, the fear is supposed to be real versus almost just kind of a humorous kind of fear. When you're watching Frankenstein or Dracula or Wolfman or whatever, I mean, those are kind of almost humorous. But sharks and economic disasters, I mean, that actually carries some real weight to it, and I think people can relate to that, and actually, I think that causes a little bit more of a realistic fear in people's lives.
It's very relatable. best characters and the best plots are those that are relatable, even if they're a work of fiction. There's something in it that is relatable, and that's what truly rocks us to our core, because as I talk about in my upcoming book, Monsters, Madness, and Mayhem, Why People Love Horror, is one of the reasons why we love it is because of it taps into our primal fears. And the more relatable something is, could very much tap into that primal fear, and I think economics and sharks, very much are part and parcel to that. So thanks for being brave and jumping on Mike and sharing that. Very, very interesting.
Well, it was kind of like going into the ocean.
Paul, you and I have talked a lot, and I've talked a lot with you, Gino, about Jaws over the last couple of weeks leading into the show, and just talking about Jaws, just an everyday conversation, and I'd be remiss if I didn't get some of your favorite memories with the film, or some of your favorite scenes that you just love to dive into when it comes to this remarkable film and its legacy. So, Gino, how about you? There are a couple of scenes that really stick out to you that they are your favorites, even if they're not scenes that people often think of, because a couple of my favorite scenes are ones that we don't talk about very often. And I love how you view cinema and are able to pick up on things that I've never even thought of before. So what are those? That's a scene or two that really sticks out to you, and why?
Gino, I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
Oh no, did we lose him?
Oh no, I think we lost Gino.
Am I here?
Oh, there you are.
Yes,
okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. I must have pulled the button out a little bit. I'm sorry. Anyway, I've got three that I could definitely mention. Of course, with everybody, it's the Robert Shaw monologue. I have to tell you, I
love that scene
today.
too. It's one of mine. Yeah.
It gives me goosebumps even today, having heard it 20,000 times. The other one, of course, which I used to bookmark on my Laserdisc back when in Laserdisc days, was when Brody's throwing the chum out, and you see the shark, or Brody sees the shark for the first time, and the whole bigger boat stuff. Yeah. But just his expression, the cigarette kind of hanging from his mouth as he opens it, I think that's a wonderful scene. But I'll tell you, there's something that still bothers me about Jaws. Oh. When Dreyfuss's character is checking on the autopsy of the girl who got killed in the beginning, there's this weird cut. And I never understood why people don't talk about it, and why there's this weird cut where he talks about it and he says, and that's what you get. There's this crazy cut. You should watch that scene. And there's this crazy edit that happens that's an obvious jump edit of some kind. And if I could ask Steven Spielberg anything about the movie, I'd ask him, what is that crazy edit? What was there? I'd love to see the footage.
Do you think it was more screen time of Chrissy's corpse?
But it was rough. It's a rough edit, and that's what, obviously there's probably plenty of stuff. We always have stuff cut from a film. But it looks so rough, like it was a last-minute choice or something happened or whatever. But, I'm sure that for ratings purposes, they needed to not show so much of the body or the remains. So I get that, but I just often wondered, for someone as good as Steven Spielberg and his crew, whoever did the editing, I honestly don't remember. But you would think they would have done a better job. But that monologue, and when they take off, when they first take off, and he's singing and he's throwing limericks out, Quint is, Robert Shaw is, and telling don't forget your galoshes and all this stuff. I love that too, because that's when things get moving. That's when the music becomes more upbeat, and we start to see all that sea cinematography.
And also I will say justice for Chrissy, and fun fact about Chrissy. So one of the things that South Florida is well known, Central Florida, is Weeki-Wachee mermaids.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Chrissy was one of the Weeki-Wachee mermaids down there before she became Jaws' first victim. Fun fact.
Interesting. I love all your fun. I know love all your fun facts. If I could go on TeePublic and buy a T-shirt for you that had just a couple of words on it that would describe everything about you, it would just simply be fun fact. Yeah.
Yes, and that would annoy my wife just enough, which I support.
Well, and I can add to his fun fact. She actually really died just about a year ago. She recently passed on.
Oh, I did not know
the
that.
Actress. She finally she passed on probably less than a year ago. I want to think.
One of my favorite fun facts, and Gino, I'm sure you know about this. Do you know about the Alex Kittner sandwich, the restaurant. That do you know about that?
No.
So
maybe I know it as something else. But
okay.
Go ahead, tell me.
So the actress who plays Alex Kittner's mother.
Okay,
right.
While we're on the topic,
grandmother.
There's
okay, yes,
no
I agree. We all
way
know
that she is his mother.
No,
yeah, she's an oldie.
Yes, exactly. We all look at that and go, no, that's a bold choice. It's wrong. But so the actress who plays Alex Kittner's quote-unquote mother
right.
goes into a restaurant one day and she sees that she could order a Alex Kittner sandwich. And she finds that very amusing. So she tells the waiter, the server, do you know that I played Alex Kittner's mother in the movie Jaws? And he goes, what a coincidence. I have somebody for you to meet. Out walks the actor who plays Alex Kittner.
Oh, wow.
I
didn't know that story.
Oh, yeah, who's now running a restaurant. And so they connected for the first time since filming. All these years apart, all these years later, they connected. And so it's just a very heartwarming story of, after he got eaten by a shark, he opened a restaurant. That's what you do. Justice for Chrissy.
Another heartwarming moment plays into one of my favorite scenes. You guys have already mentioned a couple of ones I really like, but one of my favorite scenes in the film is a scene of Chief Brody and his son at the dinner table. And that moment, it's a rarity in this film of calmness and this vulnerability. And what I love about that moment is it communicates everything we need to know about Chief Brody without any words at all. Norma Desmond would approve. We didn't need dialogue. We had faces.
And their relationship.
Yeah.
And we certainly get a lot of faces in here as they're making the different faces at one another, mimicking one another. I feel that this scene in just a couple of minutes demonstrates Brody's humanity, shows the power of communicating without the need of dialogue, and I love the emotional simplicity that really resonates with us because it gets to there's a large degree of humanity in that scene. Oh, my dad wants to chime in again. Angela, you got it on? Great, wonderful.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking that his son symbolizes everybody who are identifying with Chief Brody's problem. So it's this identification thing, and so we're identifying with him as the lead character in many ways throughout the entire movie. But in that moment, when the son is sitting beside him, he's actually personifying this identification, with the chief physically. But now we're all doing it emotionally.
I love that. It's kind of by proxy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very deep thoughts. Plus, it provides a moment of levity.
And it is funny. And this movie certainly has moments of levity. As we get towards the end, fewer in number, but I do like that because it makes this character relatable. And so sometimes those in positions of authority may not seem relatable. Yeah. And this one certainly communicates that to us. Something else I love to talk about when it comes to this movie. We've all been to Universal Studios Florida, and I know Paul and I have also been to Universal Studios Hollywood. Gino, have you been out to Universal Hollywood?
I have not. I always wanted to take the backlot tour, but I never had a chance to do
Well,
that.
that's what we're going to talk about here, because although the golden age of Universal Studios Florida Jaws attraction closed in 2012 and replaced by some wizard kid, I can't talk about this movie without hearkening back to that fan favorite attraction. And so, Paul's got something a little.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, it's like we're right there. Now I need the 3D glasses from Jaws 3.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
So, what are some of your guys' favorite memories on the former Florida or current Hollywood Jaws attraction, which is of course still part of the world famous studio tour in Hollywood, very much scaled back from what we were used to in Florida. Paul?
Well, so obviously Florida I've done both, and Florida is always going to be the best. Now, for a different reason. The backlot tour gave you so many different things. Mm-hmm. It gave you where the Munsters was filmed. It gave you War of the Worlds and the Bates Motel, and even Whoville from Jim Carrey's The Grinch. And Jaws was looped in there along with Cabot Cove from Murder, She Wrote. But there was something going to Universal Studios in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you would be immersed in Amity. You would go to you'd play these carnival games as their 4th of July celebration is going on. You'd board the boat, and it's so upbeat. It mirrors the movie in so many ways because you board the boat, everything's upbeat. It's dun, 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 it's all happy music. And then all of a sudden you round the lighthouse, and it's a ship sinking. Gordon from Amity 3 is sinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when stuff starts getting real.
Yeah.
And then it's such actually, if you look at the map, it's such a small map of it, but it's such a great utilization of space to pack so much into it. It feels like you've been on this, to quote Gilligan, a 3-hour tour.
Yes, that everybody on that tour had enough clothes for 3 years.
Right. I mean, I sat next to the professor and I survived, so I'm good.
How I miss riding it. I'm very glad that I was able to go to Universal as a kid, and even many times after that, even before moving here, and getting a pass and going as often as I can. But there's something special about it because you did feel that you were right there in the movie. The original slogan, "Ride the Movies," it's a little bit kind of a pale representation of its former self nowadays.
Universal Studios, to me, kind of reminds me of McDonald's, and here's a weird comparison. Is because of the fact that when you were a kid and you went to Universal Studios or McDonald's, it was this kind of magical experience. It was, McDonald's used to have where you could play games, like video games. They used to have play places, all this kind of stuff. Universal, you got a big sign that says filming must take priority. So, hey, look, if you see something, great, take pictures, but we're going to be filming movies here. You're like, this is the coolest thing in my, 10-year-old self has ever experienced, or however much you were. And there's props, and there's, Twister, and there's King Kong, and there's all these Ghostbusters, all these things, and you can ride the movies. And then what you kind of get now is a growing up process. People say McDonald's has gone from a, happy kid to a depressed middle-aged adult. and it's hard to unsee that. And, but there's a growing up process. Like Universal has grown up. Their demographic has grown up.
Yeah.
They want bigger things. They want, and so some of that magic, I think, has lost.
Yeah. And just like with cinema at large, and that's a whole other conversation that we could talk about some other time.
We'll come back to deep thoughts.
Yeah, there you go.
Something Gino, else do you remember? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was just going to say, doesn't anybody remember the TV show while you were waiting in line? The Amity Today?
And it was a parrot too, I think. It was a guy and his parrot, and they're in the queue.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of odd characters. They were basically going through all these local characters, local weatherman and all this stuff, and it was like all these wacky characters. It reminded me of Martin Mull and the Fernwood Tonight thing they used to do.
Yeah, just like at Back to the Future, they had the TV. They would go just like at ET. They have the TVs, and you're watching what to expect. You're getting ready. It's immersing you into that action.
Yeah, but with here there wasn't any Jaws action. It was just the crazy characters from the town. I don't know why, but that struck I actually didn't mind waiting in line because I was enthralled by all these crazy characters doing dumb things on TV.
A lot of crazy characters in the town. And so, then it also serves as world building, maybe not so much for Jaws proper, but it brings you into the world of Amity. Because if we remember what Larry Vaughn says, Amity means friendship.
Absolutely.
And so, and I love the nod to Murder, She Wrote, because you're right. As you're taking the tram in Hollywood, if you look in the back, and the opening credits when Angela Lansbury is walking down with her fishing gear, that is the exact same background you have on Jaws when you're going through there.
Plus, as we all know, the only person who can defeat Jaws is Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote. She is our hero.
There you go.
Paul, while we're here to celebrate the original Jaws, I know something has been burning on your mind ever since I told you we were doing this, concerning Jaws 2. And we don't have a lot of time to go into Jaws 2, but I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on it particularly because we are broadcasting from the campus of Gulf Coast State College in Panama City, Florida. And so, Jaws 2 has a connection to the greater local area. Tell us a little more about that.
So, listeners, I would like to bring you back to August of 1977. No, I'm going to stay off my soapbox with this one. But so some fun facts about Jaws is they needed a couple pickup shots of some water, and it all came down to Amity, which was filmed in Martha's Vineyard. It got very cold. In fact, Ryan, you noticed that you could see people's breath in some of the shots. So they had to do some pickup shots, and they needed someplace warm. So they found the Florida Panhandle, which had beautiful emerald green water and sugar white sands, and so they did a couple pickup shots. In Florida, Panama City, Navarre area was actually uncredited in the film Jaws as a filming location.
Yeah, the first one. And so,
the first one, yes. So as part of the thank you, and also they needed it, they decided to film Jaws 2 partially in Navarre, which is, for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar, it is between Panama City and Pensacola. Navarre Beach is kind of more of especially back then, was unobstructed views. It was sugar white sands. It was all these, beautiful locations. And so they built a lighthouse there. They built different sets, but they actually came and they set up shop in this Holidome, which was this Holiday Inn Holidome in Navarre Beach, which unfortunately got blown away by Hurricane Ivan in 2004. But they set up as their base camp in this Holiday Inn. It was featured in Jaws 2. You can see it. And so they filmed I would say probably about 60 to 70% of Jaws 2 and even parts of Jaws 3 in Navarre Beach, which actually they sank over $1 million in 1977 into the local economy between lodging, food, clothing, dry cleaning, anything you can think of. It's the importance of how filming can influence local economies.
Yeah, very much so. And brings in employs a lot of people that are already in the area, brings in others, and even if they're only here to work on the film, there's always the off chance it's just like, hey, this is a great place to come back and visit. So there's so many spin-offs that can leave lasting positive impacts on an area, and I had no idea that any of that had happened with Jaws 2 until you shared it with me. And so it's a very rich history. We have a wonderful, great franchise, even though Jaws 4 is really bad.
Well, we don't talk about Jaws 4, the revenge.
And even 3 is, 3 is fun in other ways. But
3 is fun, but let me ask you a question. How did Orlando get so darn close to the ocean?
That's a great question, and it's part of suspending the disbelief. And so, because they divided filming between Navarre and Orlando, and so one of the reasons why they came down here to film, even in the first place, is because it had two things they needed: warm weather and deep enough water to support the shark platform.
And the actors didn't like getting into frigid water in the month of May to shoot what's supposed to be a 4th of July movie.
In fact, actually, they had to convert some of the Holiday Inn rooms to make sure that the director and Roy Scheider had nice rooms while they were staying there. And so it just was, they came down here and they're on the beach, and it just kind of showcases our area. And so that was, a great thing because we're so seasonal. This was from August to December. And so, back in 77, once Labor Day hit, there was nothing. There was no economy after Labor Day. The season was ending. Most places shut down, closed up, and boarded up. And so really, you actually had contributions to the local economy during the months where they really need it. And it was a shot in the arm to the economy of, Navarre back in 1977.
One of the other things that Jaws often finds itself as a part of people's annual 4th of July watches. I know it is for me, but since I just watched it recently, I may include something else this 4th of July. But here we're heading towards the end of the show here, but I imagine the movie is one of your recurring summer and or 4th of July watches. But I'm curious to know, what are some other movies, just here really quickly, that are a part of your annual 4th of July watch? For example, Outside of Jaws, I also love watching I Know What You Did Last Summer and Mars Attacks, and of course the Independence Day is in there. I can't always get all the films that I want to watch in there, but it's always Jaws, and it's always I Know What You Did Last Summer, and a few others. Paul, Gino, what are a couple other titles that are part of your annual 4th of July watch?
I'm going to let Gino answer this because I've been talking everybody's ear off.
No, you're good. Actually, Gladiator, the original Gladiator. For some reason, that's a cool summertime thing for me. I tend to watch that around that time. And like you, Independence Day, obviously not the second one.
No.
But we try to pretend the second one doesn't. But also Alien, the first Alien.
The first Alien.
I tend to watch around then.
Interesting. Why? I would never have picked that one to pair with 4th of July, so I'm very curious.
Well, because I guess it's, again, because I'm the only one in here that was alive when these movies were first coming out. And for me, that became part of the summer, because when those summer blockbusters were coming out, I was watching them for the first time. So to me, it's like a pull back to when I was a kid. So, it's being alive when they came out. So my memories start when they were in the theaters for the summer. So summer, these big blockbuster movies always say summer for me. They really do. And like for some reason, Wizard of Oz, for some reason, Easter. I can never figure out why I like watching it at Easter time. And I think it's because the networks used to play it on TV at Easter time. So I just associate, whether the movie has anything to do with it or not, I associate a lot of these things with summer. And that's because they were my summer thing. I'd be going there and watching them as a little kid.
So, Paul, we just got about a minute before you start wrapping up things here. Any titles that leap to your mind for that are your annual 4th of July watch?
So I'm going to jump on Gino's ideas because he's 1,000% correct. Movies like Twister is a big one. Men in Black. These are these are the movies that kind of came out that really, what do you do in the summertime? Well, you go out and you hang out with your friends, you play Nintendo, you go to the movies, there's so much, and it kind of brings you back to that simpler time. Now, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. Yep. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today we celebrate our Independence Day, which is one of the quintessential See what I did there? The quintessential.
Who's telling the dad jokes now?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember that Clinton once said that he liked the way he was portrayed in that movie?
Yes.
He saw himself as that guy.
Yes, exactly. And so those are, Gino, just like you said, when you watch those movies, you can kind of suspend your disbelief that there are all these problems and all these storms and all these things that are happening outside the door, but inside your living room, right now it's 19 fill in the blank, and all you need is, like maybe an ecto cooler and some, Hot Pockets, and, you don't have school the next day, even though you're like 40. And so you're able to.
I wish I was 40.
I wasn't sure, so I was going by me.
Well, if I was 14 when Jaws came out, you could probably figure it out.
Got it. You were 45. Okay.
Okay. Well, we are coming up at the end of the show, and let's not forget that the photograph at the end of The Shining is the 4th of July ball. So you can also include that one in there. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me on this voyage today. Gino, Paul, if listeners want to find out more about you and your programs, where can they find you here really quick? Gino?
Upcomingdisc.com. If you're into the music, Facebook, GE Sassani.
And Gino's going to be on Sound Sessions coming up on the 15th of July, where you will get to hear him perform, so you'll not want to miss our WKGC show that spotlights musicians from the Emerald Coast and the rest of Florida. Paul, how about you and your program?
So I am the endowed chair of the Hilton Hospitality and Tourism Management program here at Gulf Coast State College. So feel free, if you are interested in hospitality, in lodging, and attractions, we encourage you to go to gulfcoast.edu/hospitality and learn some more.
If you missed any of today's episode or to listen to past shows from WKGC, we are on a podcatcher near you. So look for our WKGC on your podcast service of choice. Next week on ReelTalk, we'll be discussing the upcoming film F1 starring Brad Pitt. It is sure to be a high-octane show.
Dun, dun, dun.
Stay tuned for Jazz in a Minor Key with Walter Hale coming up next, followed by All Things Considered starting at 3 o'clock. Thanks to all of you for listening. I hope you'll tune in again next week, same time, same place, for more Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC.
You're listening to 90.7 FM WKGC, Panama City.